And welcome in, everybody, whether you're on the East Coast, West Coast, or around the world. This is the Coach's Corner. And, of course, we are here with our resident coach, Coach John Abadamayo. How's it going, man?
What's up, Bo? How you doing? Good to see you, man.
Doing good. Good to see you. So we got quite a few things to chat about, and most of them are kind of unique in the way of they mostly look like coaching issues. And it's why I kind of brought these clips together, because these are, from the outside, they look like boneheaded player moves or lack of execution. But a lot of those things fall on coaching. And not to call the coaches out directly or anything like that, but when you see these types of things, it makes you wonder what else we're missing, right? Because we're seeing this on game day. For it to happen on game day, can't be the only place it's happening.
I would agree with that in large part, although, you know, I mean, as we know, you see players do things sometimes in games or in the heat of the moment, or the emotions get and
for sure,
you know, they just, you know, maybe act out of character. But I would agree for most things, right? Most behaviors are patterns, and you know, I'd say it's rare when you have something when you would say, wow, that was completely out of character. I'm totally shocked that that individual did this. You know, it really comes down to discipline, you know, and, you know, there's a lot of ways to take one for the team, right? I mean,
exactly.
You know, discipline and taking one for the team is when, you know, the opponent says something or takes a cheap shot. You know, you react negatively to that, right? And in a manner that hurts your team, when really what you should do is go back and tell your brothers, right? And now we put a target on that player's back. If he's talking a little bit too much smack or whatever, right? We're going to get him, but we're going to get him legally in between the snap and the whistle, you know? So there's always a better way to handle it. You know, it's an unfortunate truth, but like, you know, when it comes to like shoving matches and stuff like that, you know, that comes, the second guy in always is the guy that gets caught, always.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny that you mentioned the shoving matches. I don't have a video of this, but it makes sense to talk about it. Is during the Seahawks game, you watched a couple of guys on the same team going at it, and it was funny because people were freaking out. They're like, oh, it's a bad look and all of that. And you're in the heat of the moment, like you say, and you make a bonehead move, right? It ended up being a roughing the passer call that was after the fact. It was a dumb move. And another offensive lineman comes up, they're barking at each other, grabbing each other's face mask. And so fans were like, oh, it's a bad look. McDonald's losing the team. And the thing that's hilarious about it is they clearly have never gone and watched practice, because guys get hyper competitive, or in this scenario, frustrations are boiling over, right? These are professional athletes. Like they're out there trying to do the best they can. And, you know, if you have a teammate that messes something up that didn't need to happen, or it's in practice where, you know, you're getting after it, those kind of things happen between teammates. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, look, families argue all the time, right?
Exactly.
People, so why a team's no different. And I would argue, like, yes, it can go too far. You know, you don't want to see your teammates like throwing punches at each other on the sideline, but you know, guys getting after each other verbally, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'd say a lot of times it's more of a positive sign than a negative, because you know that they care, right? Number one. Two, like, hey, that's probably the hardest thing to do as a leader, right? And when you really cross the threshold of being a complete leader, you know, you have to be able to hold people accountable. And so, again, that's, you know, my experience, that's for players amongst one another. That's probably the hardest thing to do. the hardest threshold to cross, and as far as being a true leader. And if you're doing that, you have to make sure your own house is really, really clean. You have to have, you don't just anoint yourself to that role, but I think it's an important part of, I call it, push pull. It's easy to be the cheerleader and encourage at somebody and pat them on the back when everything's going smoothly, and you want to be supportive at the same time if a guy is failing. But if it's an effort or something that's been gone over, mistake that's preventable, then yeah, as a leader, it's your job to to bring that to the light and say, hey, we need better from you. You're better than this.
Yep.
But depending on how that message is delivered, it just really depends on the individual, the rapport that they have with one another, and really whatever their communication style is. But it's not necessarily, like you said, I agree with you. It's not necessarily a negative, right from the get-go.
Well, and this particular case, they're getting absolutely shellacked by the Bills, right? So, I mean, for you to go from 0 to 100 frustration level, it happens, right?
Sure.
And so they're grabbing each other's face mask and they're yelling at each other. But I mean, for it to happen on Sunday during the game, sure, it's not the best look. I'll give it that. But that kind of stuff happens in practice all the time.
Sure.
So it's something that I think fan bases overreact about, because it's a part of football, and it's not just at the pro level. I mean, that happens all throughout football.
Right. And again, it's like, look, it's no one's, I don't blame people for thinking that, because they just haven't been around it. Right. They haven't seen that happen, but it doesn't, we all have to be careful not to make instant judgments. You know what I mean? And sometimes, these things get way overblown. I mean, guys recognize that there's things that are said and done in the heat of the moment that, once things calm down and cooler heads prevail, that, it's water under the bridge. It's like, you end up winning the game, or whatever. Guys are probably having a beer together afterwards when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, that's a distinct difference with guys anyway, right? Like, we'll get in a fight, and then once you're done, you're just like, yeah, you want a beer? Or like, I mean, we did the thing, and
right.
Yeah, well, and I would imagine this one gets squashed also once they hit the film room, because it was clear after the fact. I mean, you're almost 2 seconds after the ball was released that you knock Josh Allen down. Allen's getting that call every time.
Sure.
I mean, it's not like he's out there and he's Cam Newton, where they kind of look the other way because he's a runner first a lot of times, stuff like that. Like Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, like all those guys are getting that call every time. So you got to be smart out there.
As they should. It's like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a protected position. So, I mean, you have to be smart on defense.
Yep.
So we'll get into some of the clips we do have, and this one here is hilarious in a number of ways, unless you're a Bears fan, and then it's probably super frustrating. But so first off, we have this guy right here with the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
If you see, the Gunners have already released at the top of the screen there.
Yep.
He's still jacking his jaw with the fans facing the wrong direction. He actually needed his own fan base that were in the end zone yelling at him to turn around because the ball was snapped.
Right.
So first, that's crazy.
I mean, look, you play through the echo of the whistle till the game's over. I mean,
Absolutely. Well, and in this case, there was only 5 seconds left.
Right.
So this is the final play. So we got, they're coming down. He finally gets the message. Oh, I got to go do something. So, oops. All right. So then Jaden Daniels throws the ball. Then you have a few issues here also. So instant karma in the way that the guy that had his back to the play is the one that ends up tipping the ball here.
Right.
There's no defenders in back, only a receiver.
Which we always need. We always need to have one as deep as the deepest, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you usually have one that's short, one that's long, and then everybody else can go play in the middle. But you need someone that has contain.
Right.
I mean, just fundamental football here.
Yeah. And we don't want to tip this thing up in the air either. We want to try to knock it down, or at least,
Well, and that is the issue right there. He goes, palms up. Which, I mean, they tell you not to do, right? Like if you're in the middle of this scrum, you're supposed to try and scoop the ball out.
Right.
Rather than just pop it straight up. Because what do you do as receivers every single warm-up in practice? Tip drill. Every practice, every level. Yeah. And so naturally you go, nice, easy pick, drops right to him, and there's no one deep to stop the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, that is probably the easiest tip drill catch ever. Kudos to Jaden Daniels, though, moving around. They only rushed 3, so it wasn't that, that big of a deal, but just wild that nobody's back there at all. And of course, it's a game that with 5 seconds to go, I mean, if you just do good fundamental football, the odds of that catch go way down.
And then the hard part too is like what they did, what the Bears did on that last drive to, take the lead and everything. I mean, it was that's going to be a good rivalry though as the years go on. With Caleb and
Jaden. Yeah,
Jaden. I mean, it was exciting to watch those two young quarterbacks compete.
Well, and where I brought the coaching into this is not just because of the one player. He might have just got it in his head or heard the fans and got out of character a little bit. But where this one kind of falls on the coaching is during the press conference after the fact. There was a 15-yard play out route just before to set this thing up.
Right. That they completed right on the sideline with I think they threw the ball they snapped the ball with 6 seconds left, I believe. Feel free to fact check me, whomever. But it was right on that fringe where that's really the only route you can get, right? You have to get it. You can't reach the end zone. You have to get something on the sideline and caught and out of bounds in a very quick, because they didn't have timeouts either, right? And in that situation, the yardage that they need and the time on the clock, they didn't have time to go up and clock it either, right? It has, and so that situation, you're layering the sideline. You should give up any throw to the inside, even if it goes for a huge gain, because by the time if he doesn't score, the game's over if the ball is completed inbounds.
Exactly. Yeah. So, no, I mean, it was a 15-yard out and there wasn't a defender around him.
Right.
And so the coach goes on and is like, oh, yeah, that play didn't matter. Well, of course it mattered, because say it's an incomplete pass. Say you can't bracket them in, they have to throw it away. Right. Well, now, instead of this being a 65-yard Hail Mary that was short of the goal line, right? The tip is what put it in.
Right.
Well, if you now have a 75-yard or 85 or 80-yard, well, you don't have the arm to get there.
Right. Your strategy becomes different. Now you're looking at, trying to play, the lateral game.
Exactly. Which the odds go way down.
Sure. Yeah, we've seen a lot more Hail Marys be successful than those type of plays. Although, they're both low percentage. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I agree. Who knows if he likes that answer back? You know what I mean? It's it's not an easy thing to do, to go in and face the media after a game that ends that way. You know what I mean? It, just because of all the emotions involved. And I'm not making a mistake, any excuses for anybody, but I do know that it's not, I, I'm sure he expected to be asked about the Hail Mary itself. Um, you know, Obviously he probably wasn't thinking about the play before that, but I agree with you. You don't, you layer the sideline, you don't let anything out of bounds, and let them compete, let them complete a slant, let them complete a hitch, let's, take your chances with that versus, giving them a chunk play that then puts them in position to throw the Hail Mary.
Yeah, no, I mean, like in that scenario, because you knew that time was an issue, I would have ran, like a cover 4. So
Right.
does the guy catch it at the sideline? Sure.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, that's the thing. All of these clock situations, all these game managements, these are all things that need to be ingrained in your football team.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that they're not, but gosh, we had names for all of those, and they're buzzwords, and when those situations come up, you're telling the team, hey, we're in downtime. This is Big Ben territory. They have code words for the situations that the players they everybody knows. Hey, downtime means offensively we need a first down and the game's over. Or it tells the defense that we're in a 2-minute, and if we get a turnover, the game's over. We're not trying to advance it. We need to get down and then let the offense come on the field and take knee and get out of the game. So,
yep. Whatever it is, don't score.
Right. These are things that are installed, reviewed. They're looked at. Most teams would have one day a week where they have their clock management, or their game management person gets in front of the team and covers 1 or 2 situations that come up during games, that everybody can learn from. That's one that everybody's going to be looking at this week with their team and talking about what they should have done defensively, what a good job Washington did offensively in managing that, with the clock. Again, it goes for the quarterback too. If he starts to scramble around, the game's over. He's got to have a clock in his head in terms of how quickly the ball's got to get out, and we got to get out of bounds.
Well, and that's why I would have liked to cover 4 there, right? You still have
Sure.
your guys over the top, so you don't give up easy field goal range.
Right.
But then you have your linebackers, rather than where they had them clearing out for whatever reason, they would have at least been in trail position. So you have a shot at potentially tackling him before he gets out of bounds.
Right.
Instead of, this guy was on an island. I mean, he's by himself by 20 yards.
Right.
So, I mean, it just kind of a weird play call. They essentially just went to like a really deep prevent on a play that mattered.
Right. Sure.
So
yeah, they were playing the Hail Mary almost before the Hail Mary, situation was viable.
Yep, absolutely. Well, yeah, because I mean, had they thrown that, had they tried to do the Hail Mary there wasn't enough time. So the ball would have cleared the clock by the time it got down there.
Yep, probably what you're right. You're right.
So the next one we have is just a bizarre play. This is the Giants trying for a 2-point conversion in a game that was weird. This was the Giants and Steelers. Both teams seemed afraid of the end zone. Just for whatever reason, they could not get a touchdown to actually count. There was 8 field goals in this game. So, I mean, it was just kind of a bizarre Monday night.
Big punt return touchdown by the Steelers.
There was. Unfortunately, I don't have that video. That was a fantastic play, though. But this one was very unique in the 2-point conversion.
Comical, actually, that see everybody's looking in. Here comes Highsmith. It happened so fast. I thought initially Highsmith was offsides, but he was not at all, not even close. And I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I would see when teams. Remember when the Colts tried doing it in the AFC Championship game? Here comes Highsmith. It happened so fast. I thought initially. I mean,
the thing that is bizarre about this is your guys are staring at the ball.
Yeah.
And no one moves.
Yeah.
I mean, they all have the same vantage point as your defender. And the defender's the only one that left on the ball. Everyone else still standing there.
Yeah.
Like they never even tried to move.
Yeah, this one's going to be on the blooper reels for eternity. With right next to the Colts fake punt against the Patriots. That definitely, this play I would say falls into that category easily.
I mean, and the play could have worked. I think that's probably the worst part about it. Unfortunately, this is too tight of a thing. But if you looked at the alignment that they had, the Steelers actually would have been blocked up over there. They only had 3 guys defending that side. So those guys up front, if they just kind of did their job, like they didn't even have to do it great. Like you just kind of put a body on somebody, that play probably works. So that one was very weird. Like you said, with that Colts play where, it's just him in the center by himself. It's just like, like you watch them line up and you're like, what are they doing? I couldn't believe they snapped it.
It wouldn't be a play if it wasn't. So,
yeah, I mean, I think I would have taken the delay.
Yeah, I know. I'd like to know the backstory there in terms of what they were actually trying to do. I'm sure there's a lot of questions and answers. A lot of questions to be asked in the staff meeting after that.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, realistically, on all of these clips, I would not want to be in the film room on Tuesday.
No.
Like Tuesday's film session for all of these clips has to be terrible, especially for that first one with the Bears defender.
Oh, there's no doubt.
That guy is getting barbecued for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So then we have, this one is unique in, I didn't realize the rule had an exception like this. And only because we've never really seen it. And that is the Pickens reception, or, incompletion, I should say. So, to what we were talking about before we got on camera, John Madden's book, right?
Yep. Yeah. The phrase one knee equals 2 feet. Bo and I were talking offline and, I had to remind them that came from John Madden. It was actually the title of John Madden's book. And, and I think, it's been decades literally since I read the book, but I'm pretty sure it was in the beginning. He talked about, he was calling a game on Monday Night Football. And, there was a question on whether the receiver got 1 or 2 feet down, which he, was, he had gotten 1 foot down, or neither down, but he got a knee down, and it was hence 1 knee equals 2 feet. Where this one's going to get talked about, and I would predict that there will be a rule. They'll make an adjustment to the rule and what defines a catch, because you're right, we haven't seen this now, but this just seems really odd because of where he catches, the ball and the amount of distance that's traveled before he ends up out of bounds, and we see his right foot actually touch down
twice.
2 times, once right here, then contact's made, and then it goes again. So by letter of the law, the way the rule is written, and I'm sure when I'm on the 33rd team call here at 5:00. I hope that Blandino talks about this one, and I'll
I'll
be
be
sure to go back.
surprised.
Yeah.
I'll be surprised if that doesn't come up.
Oh,
because-
for sure. Because it's such a, I can't remember this ever happening. And again, look, it's a primetime game. But yeah, this one will be, I'll be shocked if they don't, because if any other body part, right? If it's a shin or a elbow comes down, that's going to be a catch.
Anything, yeah.
But I don't think they're incorrect. They can't make judgments on their own in terms of how a rule should be interpreted. It's written, it's spelled out. Again, I'll be shocked if this doesn't get amended, because that should, I don't think you would get many people to disagree, even some Giant fans, that shouldn't be a catch moving forward.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, the fact that left foot never touched is incredible. Right. And talk about a heads up play by the defender, right? Sure. To put the body on him and get him out. But it just, the amount of distance for where that foot hits twice, because it's not like it was like a little stutter step type of, I mean, that was a full step difference.
Right. The silver lining is, look, the Steelers still won the game. So, unlike some of these things, Dallas, it seemed like every time his or Calvin's, weird stuff always, when I was with the Lions, weird stuff always happened whenever we went to Dallas. But that's why I was so glad to see them handle them 2 weeks ago. But yeah, that one's going to come back and be a rewrite.
Well, then it comes to, what's the distance you got to travel to make that work. So, I mean, obviously there's some logistical things they'd have to work out in that, but to the letter of the law,
if the catch is made and the same foot comes down twice, I think that counts as a right left,
Yeah.
But you brought up a great point. Like, what happens if a guy just hops on one foot, out of bounds?
I mean, the way this was ruled, it'd be incomplete.
It'd be incomplete. Yeah, exactly. Say he sprains his ankle, and
right. And like just it off. Yeah, I mean, it would it be the third time, because then that's a football move, even though the other foot didn't come down. I mean, it's just kind of a weird scenario. How's it going, Jake? Yeah, but it's so unique because I've never seen that necessarily come up before, right? I don't know, just a weird sequence. And then this one, I don't even think I can blame this on coaching. And this is Diggs for Dallas, responding to a reporter because he didn't like basically he didn't like the way that the reporter was coming after him. And the reporter wasn't really wrong in asking the question, right? Like he basically was like, what are you doing here? You seem like you're disengaged from the play. And so,
it looked like I watched the play. I mean, it looked like it was,
okay. So we'll listen to it with sound after, but if you watch Diggs, he's at the top of the screen, and so he's back at the back, right? So he's trailing, and then he kind of coasts. And this is where the reporter brought it up, right? He's sort of coasting behind the play. Now, the way that he probably should have reacted is, hey, I had help to the inside, right? So he didn't have a great line. He obviously could have kept running faster and maybe got him a couple yards shorter. but he didn't
Yeah.
actually have the line to tackle the guy. He would have ran into his own defender.
Sure.
So, I mean, the easy correct answer is be like, oh, I didn't have the line. I was essentially keeping outside contain.
Yeah, my back was to the ball initially because we were in man coverage and I was covering the corner seam. I turned around, see the ball after it's completed the Kittle, and it's a bad look, but he certainly didn't help himself. I'll let you. I don't know if you want to play the comments or not.
Yeah, so I'll play the audio too. But I mean, like there were so many ways for him to correctly address this. And instead, because this is what Diggs does.
That's what you got now. That whole play, that's what you got now.
I'm asking. We can talk about it more. What were you doing now?
So he's like, we can talk about it more. And he's like, well, you can talk about these nuts. And it's like, man, it's a legitimate question. I mean, what were you what are you doing? You are trailing the position. And again, when I watch the video, it's not like I necessarily see that he did anything wrong. I mean, coasting behind it kind of lets you be contained in two ways. Because if Kittle tries to break out, you still have the outside contain there. The inside contain if he breaks in.
Sure.
And then because he starts to go past, then you speed back up, you force him out of bounds. Like I didn't really see a problem with what he did.
No, I know. It's just look. He almost looks like was expecting someone else to make the play before he got there. He didn't.
Yes.
He was kind of blocked by his own teammate. The bottom line is, man, you have to have thick skin to be in this business, and you have to keep your poise. I get the frustration with the media sometimes. Those he's right. They don't play. They don't. They don't get all the nuances. I think as pros, we have to understand that, and we have to do a better job of representing ourselves and educating the public, which that's why the media is there, right? They're there for the fans, to get answers for the fans. Look, there's nothing wrong with saying I made a mistake but handling it this way is not good. The unfortunate part for him is he's got to understand that there's going to be backlash and that he's going to have to answer for his actions. Not, when it could have been over with, it'd be yesterday's story, right? But now it's yesterday's story and it's today's story. And look, I get it. I understand the frustration. They're not playing well. It's probably not a lot of fun right now to be. Be in that Cowboys locker room, be in that organization right now because they're taking live fire from everywhere. So I get it. I've been there. The lesson is you have to keep your poise and just be a pro.
Exactly. Well, and you can't give what could be perceived as a mistake legs to stand on its own. Like,
sure.
Just go in and be like, yeah, this is what I saw from my angle.
Right.
And then that's it. Then it's done. You just be like, yeah, I had my defender right to my left. I stayed back. I was in line with Kittle. He couldn't come inside. Then as he,
who was on Kittle in coverage? What can you go back? I want to see.
Yeah, let me bring it back up here. I don't know if we'll be able to see just because the image is small.
Did they have a DB on him? Or back? Yeah, I mean, he's not a guy that's where he's such a problem. It's he's almost a mismatch for a linebacker. And then when you put a DB on him, even if it's a safety, there's a physical mismatch there. So that's, look, that's one of the things that makes him a great player, a dangerous player, because you have issues, right? I mean, either there are no great matchups for him, so Or I mean, there are, but they're rare. You know, the average linebacker is not going to be able to cover him for very long. You know, and
Oh,
then the average DB is going to probably struggle to get him on the ground, especially once he's rolling. Right? It's different tackling these guys right after the catch. You know, where their focus is still on the ball and completing the catch. Now that he's got the ball and he's a runner, it's a different deal, you know.
Oh yeah.
As far
Well,
as getting
especially as a
this guy
DB
to
because
jump.
he's got 40 pounds on you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's a different deal now. I mean, and again, in Diggs's defense, and you brought it out, it's like he doesn't have a great angle on this play. His responsibility was covering that corner route. He's coming off of that, you know, because something told him the ball is completed, and he just never had a great angle for that, you know. But I just think he lets up a little bit toward the end of the play, and then that ends up biting him. He's letting up because he thinks that his teammate's in a better position to make the play.
Yeah, no, and that's why I say, like, when you watch the film, it actually isn't terrible.
Look,
But
there's things that happen in football that, as a coach, as a player, as a fan, look, I call them shit sandwiches. There's just stuff that happens, and sometimes you get served a shit sandwich, and you just have to take a bite of it, you know.
Yep.
So, look, for Diggs, this was a shit sandwich, right? And
absolutely. And Jay, you're right. The way he
Yep.
trailed back made it look like he had the inside contained there on if he tried to cut it back in, because Kittle hadn't gone past that other defender yet.
Yep.
And then as soon as he does, you see Diggs speed up.
yep,
So, I mean,
that's a great point as well, Jay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like, again, what I saw out of the video didn't seem like he should be getting torched. But if you've never played,
Sure.
and you see that, you know, you see him start coasting, you're like, oh, okay, well, what were you doing there? Which is a legitimate question. So
Sure.
that's where you just follow up with, this is what I was doing, instead of taking it personally. And then now this thing gets to live on rather than you just take your L and move on to next week. This thing's going to be on every sports media network for the entire week.
Right.
Especially because
the other thing that's interesting about this interview is, like, you look at it, it's like, man, he's still got his uniform on, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of used to seeing these interviews, like, I don't know, you know, if they're dressed still, they're behind the backdrop, you know, they're taking multiple questions, or these it's around their lockers. This one just seems weird because he came out and then he went back in. You know, it just was.
So
Do you have
he
any
came
other
out
insight on that?
because, so he came out because this reporter actually posted something on, I believe, Twitter or X, or, you know, whatever. So Diggs sees it and then comes out and addresses it.
Okay,
Right.
I'm wondering if this is actually even before the locker room's open.
I think it is. I
Right.
think it is.
Which, you know, again, that's another mistake. Like, that's a reason they have what they call a cooling down period, right? You know, after the game, that I don't recall exactly what the amount of time is, but there's an amount of time, you know, when the game is over and the teams return to the locker room where, you know, it's just coaches, players, and staff, right? And that cooling off period is important. You know, it allows the coaches, the head coach and the coordinators and the position kind of make their final remarks, you know, as terms of the game, won, loss, whatever. And then, you know, the players have a little bit of time to collect themselves before the media comes in and starts asking questions. So, you know, I've got my, Sherlock Holmes hat on now. So what probably I'm sure happened was he got back to the locker room and he either saw that tweet or somebody showed him that tweet. And, you know, he's still in the heat of the moment. And now he's going to go out and address this thing where really, you know, he probably needed to cool down a little bit and collect themselves and let them, think about how he's going to answer the question before he goes out and just, freelances it. But hey, look, we live and we learn. Hopefully he'll learn from this and be better the next time because he's a great player. He's a
absolutely
phenomenal player.
Yeah, no, it was just another odd thing.
Yep. Well,
but-
I mean, look, pressure does that to people, right? And I'm not saying that he doesn't handle pressure well. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there's a lot of pressure to win these games. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Going out and trying to win a football game, and when things don't go according to plan, and you're kind of on a losing streak, and that you've been hearing it all week long, and now it's just going to be even more. Look, it's gotten a lot of people. A lot of people have succumbed to that. And look, he's a pro. He's prideful. He's a young man, and I'm sure he didn't appreciate being challenged in that way. And look, those things happen. But like I said at the very top, it's in your job description. We get paid a lot of money to do what you do, and there's a lot of people that care, which is why you get paid. So you just have to learn to play that game along with
For sure. And Jay, it's funny because your question, it depends on how they let up. So like if I would have seen the way Diggs let up there as a teammate, I would have thought, oh, he didn't have a good line. He's keeping contained. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. If I watch you not give effort, which we've seen some players do this year also, where even the coach calls out, oh, they made a business decision on that play. Well, if you're the other 10 guys on that field with the guy that decided not to put effort out, yeah, you're probably in that guy's face. But in this case, I mean, you wouldn't have thought twice about it. Even watching the film of it, you're like, yeah, I mean, I don't see anything too wrong with that, really. Running laps. Yeah. I mean, that's if the coach, perceived the right thing.
Look, I remember, Tom Coughlin, who brought me into the NFL, saying that the integrity of professional football is in the effort, right? And you think about that quote, the integrity of pro football is in the effort. I mean, that means it's required from you all the time, all the time. That play is really one that's kind of on the fringe, but it needs to be addressed, whether it's one-on-one, or in front of the group. That's kind of, that's probably a coach's decision. If it was egregious, the guy's going to get called out in front of everybody,
Yeah, especially this one here. The guy that, on the Bears, exactly. That's getting called out.
Yeah, that's getting called out, and it's rightfully so. And he's, if they have a team, if they have leaders in that locker room, you better believe that, that his teammates are calling him out 100%. And the coaches will as well. But Diggs is, that one might be more in the meeting room, one-on-one. Not necessarily maybe put him on blast, but I'd like to know, if I was coaching him, if I was his position coach, I like, hey, what'd you see? What were you thinking? What were you thinking right now? And I'm sure he's probably going to say, look, I didn't have an angle on him, and I thought that was his play. I can't go through my teammate to get to him.
Well, yeah, and he had him bracketed to the sideline. Yeah. So if you slow up, it makes sure that he can't cut back in. Right. I mean,
I would say that I should have bursted through the finish. That's the only thing I probably should have done better, right?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing, like, I wish I would have had all 22 of that play, because it would have been interesting to see it from the other side.
Sure.
The only angle that I had of that was the broadcast angle. But if I would have had the all 22 for that one, I think it would have been very interesting, not just from the opposing sideline, but coming in from the end zone, I think would have been a cool view of it, because I think it would have truly given you some perspective of where he was exactly with the other defender.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
well, if I get that on my, maybe we can revisit it next week. But
yeah. So, and then of course, in the last 15, we got to talk about, as we're talking about integrity, great segue into, everybody's seen the face mask where Darnold gets taken down, ends up being a safety, non-reviewable, even though it's a scoring play, because the penalty end of it isn't a reviewable thing. So it basically keeps the Vikings from having a shot to, tie the game up. Now, would they have tied it up? Who knows, right? Never can tell. But there's a distinct difference between having the ball with no timeouts, a minute 36, down 8, than, a minute 24, kicking the ball to the other team with no timeouts, down 10, right? It's a very different feel. And it was a very obvious face mask. There was 2 different refs that had direct line. It was the back judge and the actual referee were both direct eye line to the penalty that wasn't called. And this exact crew missed a pivotal defensive pass interference against the Falcons from KC in week 3. And, I jokingly put out there, is this, are these just bad refs, or are they point shaving now that the NFL is, sponsored by every sports book known to man?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there really does need to be something to hold the refs accountable, because they've decided way too many games, especially over the last few years. And, they have their own union that they deal with, but the NFL doesn't seem to hold them accountable to anything. They don't get fined. Like there's nothing that makes a difference. Sometimes they have to, issue an apology, which doesn't change that L to a W. So it seems like they need to be fully ingrained with the NFL, full-time employees actually employed by the NFL, not their own entity. Even if, similar to the players union, like they can still be unionized, that's fine. Just there needs to be something to help hold them accountable, because what we're watching is there's no recourse if they make bad calls.
Right. Well, there's no immediate recourse. I agree. And, I definitely feel everyone's frustration on that. But the one thing the league does do is they do go through a very rigorous review process every game, every call scrutinized. And, although, if you're on the losing end of this and you're a fan or a coach or a player, it doesn't help you, right? Because we want to see instant, we want to see him to go to jail, do not pass go and do not collect $200. But there is a review process. They do get graded. And if they're consistently, underperforming, they're going to get replaced right now. I do go back to what you said about it being a full-time job. I felt that way for a long time. I mean, being an NFL official, first of all, it's not an easy gig to get. Let's not make no mistake. These guys are really, really good at what they do. They know the rules, the mechanics. They've really, they put a lot of time into the skill and the learning the skill of being a good official. All right. And it is a skill. It takes incredible eye discipline. They're very locked in and focused. There's mechanics to it. There's a lot that goes into it that the average fan and even honestly the average coach doesn't realize, right? So I always felt like, if and I would advise this to every young coach, right, is go take an officiating class. If you're a college student and you're thinking about going into coaching, you should take an officiating class. You should go officiate a high school game, or, do that, because it's going to make you a better coach the more you understand that. Now, with that, like I said, it's the greatest part-time job in American history, right? I mean, these guys are bringing down six-figure incomes and then going back and, running their law firms, their car dealerships, whatever it is that they do during the week. Yeah, exactly. Now look, you contrast that with baseball, basketball, and hockey. They're all, full-time employees, right?
And even still, it's hard to get fired. I mean, Angel Hernandez was blowing calls for 20 years before he finally got forced out.
But and the argument would be, obviously those sports they play every day or every other day, right? Where football is just once a week, and but I just think that they put in a lot of time already. The good ones do. They put it, they're required by the league to. So, but I just think they should make them full time. They're unionized. They have more bargaining power than the coaches do. The assistant coaches are not in a union. They never, the league won't allow that because they view us as management. But, look what happened. We had the official strike a few years ago, right? I mean, you were in Seattle for that. Was it Golden Tate?
I mean, it worked out for us, but what a disaster.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, the one thing I will credit that play on is it forced the hand to get the backup refs out.
Right.
Like that was that scenario where they're like, okay, you know what? You're right. We got to get our actual refs back.
Sure.
That was the play for that. But it was, and it's funny because there's a lot of work that goes into the refs. Like, no question. I mean, they even teach them how to run because they got to be able to run like a receiver so that the horizon isn't bouncing, so they can keep their eye on the play. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Not saying that, but when you have crews that routinely miss things, that is where, you're like, okay, we got to figure something out here.
Right. And look, it's, it makes for good drama. I think we're certainly at the point where technology, you could say we could eliminate even having the officials on the field, right? We could have 5 drones flying around out there, different, they could just have different camera angles and, and all do it from the booth or and whatnot. But I think the human element, the interaction of it, I think it's what still, it's still part of the game. Every once in a while, one will have poor mechanics. They'll be in the wrong spot and they'll get run into or whatever. They're a part of the field, right? There's no, that's in the rule book. The rule book accounts for that. I think that it's still one of the things. It's the human element of the game that I hope we never get too automated. What amazes me, in this age of instant replay and multiple camera angles, is the percentage of times where they actually get it right. I don't think we give them enough credit for that. The fact that they get it right a lot of times when it's bang, bang, and they don't have they're seeing it in real time with no kind of replay whatsoever, like we get on TV.
Well, it's funny, even when you listen to the guys on TV, right?
Yeah.
They'll watch the replay and it'll be, slow motion for them. And then they're like, oh, wow, no, that was a good call. But, so, I mean, there's definitely that element. But when you have specific units that seem to drop the ball more consistently, even if you're not necessarily firing them or anything like that, but it seems like you might break that unit up.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, this unit just doesn't seem to get the calls correct. Let's break them into some of these other units. Let's see if we can elevate the game here.
Yeah, I always felt like they should have a scoring system. They should have, and I know they have backup crews. They should have like 3 bullpen crews, and every 2 weeks, the lowest ranked crews, they should sit, and then they bring the subs in. And, if you're consistently grading out well, then, you continue to work. But if you don't, then you don't get to, you're down this week, kind of.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And Jay, the holding calls, there's holding on every single play. Like, they can't possibly throw the flag every time there's holding. If you've ever practiced with O linemen or D linemen, they hold every play. Like, if you've ever been on the field with them, like that's how they do their job. They get really creative about not getting called for it, but they're holding on to that jersey every time.
Yep. There's legal holding.
Exactly. Yeah. You keep your hands inside the shoulders, and you can kind of grab that stuff without it looking like anything. But believe me, they're still holding on to you. There were plenty of times that, as a DB, I was going to try and shoot a gap on a, corner blitz. And, one of them 6'5", 350-pound, you get a hold of you, your $185 just isn't quite enough. Turns out those big Samoan guys are big.
Hey, bro, I was going to ask you about what do you have there with Tyler Lockett on your?
Oh, yeah. So this is a signature card.
Okay.
So I'm actually giving that away when I hit the 500 subscription mark
Nice.
to YouTube. And I have 2 more of them. So I'm going to give one away at 500, one more away at 1,000. So I got these when I was coaching at the Tyler Lockett event.
Nice.
And so, which was fun, right? Like, you get to coach kids, and so it was a blast. So I got a few of the signature cards and stuff. So, but I'm not really a collector. So right. I give that stuff away. Like, I have some of my old footballs that I've kept. So like this one, just to give you an idea of the age of this, the only division title that the Seahawks had was the 88, right? And it's the AFC logo. So this ball's a couple years old.
Right.
But yeah, for the most part, like, I don't keep a lot of stuff.
Gotcha. Cool.
But yeah, the helmet in the middle. Yeah, I had that one special made for my logo. I just haven't put the logo on it yet. But color scheme wise, I had that one made for me. Yeah. So anyway, that gets us to the end of the show.
Yeah. Good show.
Absolutely. Always fun. If you are watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Helps us bring our content to you. And if you're watching on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. And yeah, Jay, I'll hit you up. That would be amazing. All right. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
I lost my outro. Here we go.
Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand